I'm so excited to finally be doing this video. Hey there and welcome to my channel. This is Foggy Fiction and I am Haley. I'm a writer living with mental illness, doing my best to show that mental health does not dictate talent or worth and hoping to encourage others to chase their dreams. If you are new to my channel, I try to post one to two videos a week, usually centered around things related to writing, reading, and mental health. But sometimes I get off topic and that's okay too. In today's video, I'm asking questions instead of answering them. I'm listing the top questions that I would love to ask an author if I had the chance. Not any specific author unless otherwise stated, just in general questions that, as a writer and a reader, I would love to be able to get answers on from authors who have seen any degree of success. So if you're an author watching this video, or even just a writer who's still on that journey, and you have the time, I'd love to hear your answers to any of these questions in the comments below. Or better yet, make a video and drop the link in the comments for the rest of us to find and devour. Alright, let's get to it. Number one is a two-part question. What was the moment you thought you were going to give up, and what made you keep going? This is a question I'm sure most writers would love an answer to. We've all had those dark moments, and imposter syndrome is a very real thing that nearly every writer goes through. And for some writers, when they reach that moment when they feel like they want to or just should give up, they do. They walk away and never look back. Or walk away and come back weeks or months or years later. So for those of you that wanted to give up, or did and came back, what was that moment, and what made you decide to keep writing? Number two. This one is inspired by Joey Paul, who, at least at the time I wrote this, had recently mentioned preferring one over the other in a video. The question is, do you find more enjoyment in the drafting phase or the editing phase? Everyone has a preference. I used to think mine was in editing, but funnily enough, that was back before I ever actually finished a draft. You know, when I'd go back and edit some more and then never get past 7 chapters in draft, you know? Now that I've learned more and discovered what works for me, I found so much more excitement in getting the story out of me and a lot more anxiety in going back in to fix it. And I can't help but wonder, especially for someone who has already published books and might be faced with like deadlines and what have you, which do you prefer? Oh, and even better, has that changed since publishing and everything that comes with that? I'd love to hear answers from everyone, published or not, but that definitely has me more curious about those feelings once you already have a book out there. Number 3, what is the scariest part about being an author? I know that we're all afraid of the querying part, sure, but is that really the scariest thing? Deadlines, marketing, going on submission, realizing your agent isn't right for you, reviews, taxes, becoming famous overnight if that was your experience, not seeing the success you dreamed of. Anxiety follows me in every single thing that I do, and those are the things I've already thought about. So I'm curious, and maybe wanting to prepare myself and feel like I have a tiny bit more control over that aspect, which part of that long, difficult journey of becoming an author was the scariest? Or if you're lucky and had a quick and easy journey, still, I'm jealous and I still want to know what part brought the most fear out in you. And if you're still working to get published, what is scaring you now? I'd love to know your answers, and then we can all pause and go look at the Awe subreddit for a few minutes to shake those fears away before we move on. Number 4. Are you a pantser, a plotter, or a plantser? I know this is a question that gets asked a lot in the writing and AuthorTube community, but it's still one that fascinates me on how different everybody is, especially for people like me who used to be a pantser and then saw better results with plotting, but realized I'm actually a plantser who works best somewhere in between depending on the story. Where do you fall, and have you always been there? Why is that what works for you? What was the moment you realized the old way wasn't working and you had to change? Or did you always just know? A lot of famous authors and authors in general talk about their method, but there are so many that don't, and I want to know. Did Bobby Adair write the Slow Burn series by the seat of his pants? Has Lindsay Sands plotted all 30 plus books in her Argento series? What about Anne Rice, Stephen King? Dan Brown surely has to plot all the twists and turns in his books. What about you? And I'm really curious too if there is significantly more in one of those 3 categories compared to all the others. Am I the only person that's curious about that? I don't know, but I want to know. Number 5. How many stories had you written or started but never finished before you finally got one published? There's this thing that I think most writers go through at the beginning where they think that their first story is the one. That first story that captured their attention and set their creative soul on the path, that's a story that's going to be the big one. I think we all go through it and we all want to believe it, but of course that's generally not what happens. I don't have any statistics handy, but I feel like all the experiences I've read about or watched on YouTube, most authors write a handful of books before they get to the one that actually gets published. I can't tell you how many stories I've started writing before I ever finished a full draft. And that's not counting the first book I thought I had written back in high school that was just 20,000 words of awful. I've now written 2 manuscripts, neither of which are published, and I'm still in that mind of thinking that that first one is going to be the one. And so it has me curious, how many authors do get to publish their very first finished book baby? How many don't? How many manuscripts did you write and query before you finally got picked up and published? And if it wasn't your first one, did you ever go back and try to publish it again later? If you self-publish, same question. Did you publish that first one or move on to the next? And did you ever go back to that first one? I really do hope that my first one can be published someday. It is the story on my heart, and the beta feedback I got was mostly really good. Honestly, I'd like to have a bunch of drafts completed before I published anyway, just so that I'm ahead of some of those hurdles when it comes to what's next on my journey. Number 5. Why did you choose traditional publishing, self-publishing, or going hybrid, whichever applies to you? There's always talk about choosing one or the other, and everyone has their own reasons. I'm curious what yours is, whether you're already published or know which route you plan to take. If you went or are choosing to go hybrid, what led you to that decision? Which route did you take first and why? I have personally always dreamed of being traditionally published, but I'm very interested in the idea of taking the hybrid path, mostly thanks to Kate Kavanaugh's channel. And if I do take that path, I know my intention would be to traditionally publish first, as TradPub has always been the dream and I want to follow it. Plus, I know that the market for poetry and short story collections doesn't seem to be all that great, as I don't think most of the literary agents I've seen on social media seem interested in those. But I love writing poetry and short stories, so self-pub seems to be the way to go with that. But I'm still a baby writer. What I know is purely off of research, social media, and watching YouTube, which is why I want to know your answer to this question. What made you choose one over the other or just doing both? And bonus question, if you're already published, how is that decision working for you? Number 7, what do you wish you had done differently? In any part of your writing career, I know we all look back and have those moments, even if they're little moments that don't really make a difference in the long run. We look back and think, man, I wish I would have done it this way. Or, why couldn't I have skipped that? Or something along those lines. And if you're someone who doesn't ever have those moments, well, I mean, what's that like? Seriously though, there are great learning opportunities in this question. What if I'm already doing something that you wish you hadn't? What if I'm not doing something that you wish you had? You don't even have to be published already. Sometimes we learn these things before we even make it to the goal. And if your answer isn't something I can learn from, I'm still curious if your journey always took the path you wanted it to. I mean, that's really what this whole video is. I'm curious and I want to learn. Which leads me to my last 2 questions, which I'm asking together for reasons I'll explain right after I ask. Numbers 8 and 9, what's your biggest piece of advice? And what advice do you think needs to be given more often? I'm grouping these together because for some of you, your biggest one might also be the advice that you don't think is being thrown out there enough. But for others, maybe you have a little bit of advice you never hear and would love to share, but it isn't necessarily the thing you think is most important. Either way, I want to hear all of it. I've saved these 2, for last because I'm really just handing the torch off to you. I'm really just asking you to give us the best knowledge you have to offer. I don't care how far into your journey you are or what part of the journey that advice relates to. What big advice do you have to give, and what am I not hearing enough of? I want to know. I think all of us want to know. So those are my questions, and I'm so incredibly excited to hear what anyone who decides to answer them for me has to say. Again, you can leave your answers in the comments below, or you can totally make a new video and answer them there. Just please leave the link below so we can all find it and watch. And also, if anyone has any other questions that they've been itching to ask an author, please drop them in the comments below too. You never know who might answer it. Saying that sounds like I'm implying that I'm going to answer it, and I'm definitely going to, but I was trying to imply that other AuthorTubers might, so, we'll just move past that. Either way, I'm so excited. This video was so fun to do. I really enjoyed coming up with all of these questions, and I'm so excited to see what other ones might pop up in the comments, and I'm so excited for the answers that we might get. So like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're interested in following my very clumsy journey as a writer living with mental illness, and enjoy the happy moments.